I'm Congressman Ron Paul from Texas. I'm the champion of liberty. I am the only one that has offered a balanced budget in a sincere method. And also, I present the case for a free society as being the best defense for peace and prosperity.
Guess what, Paul? If you get video of Sarah Palin or get a soundbite from her, bring that back to us. You can hold the Ron Paul stuff.
Ron Paul, you're the most untalked about contender today after this weekend I can ever remember. You should be getting as many headlines as Michelle Bachmann. You nearly beat her, and yet, oddly, the media seem completely obsessed with her and not obsessed with you. Why is that?
There's actually a system at work here with...
But is there a media bias against him? Just from the media's point of view, isn't he good for the media because he challenges Republican orthodoxy and causes debate and generates and stimulates the discussion about ideas that the other Republicans don't want to talk about?
Well, that's right. And it's because the other Republicans don't want to talk about it. It's because he is such an extraordinary candidate that the mainstream media doesn't pay attention. They don't believe that Ron Paul, with his libertarian bent, could actually be the GOP nominee. To the contrary, every time Ron Paul comes out, attracts huge crowds, gets numbers that are sufficient in the polls to say this could be your Republican nominee, there's a base of Republicans, but especially the mainstream media, that refuse to acknowledge. It's like he's standing in front of them and they say, I don't believe it. Don't believe it, not credible. I'm going to rub my eyes and see if I can... Oh, he's still there? Yeah, but who's first, who's third?
There's actually a system at work here with...
And a CBS News poll released just before the debate showed that Kaine was leading the pack with 18%. Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich were tied for second with 15%.
There's actually a system at work here with...
Have you been shafted?
I don't know what the word is, but if somebody else volunteers that term, I'm not going to argue with them. But something strange went on.
There's actually a system at work here. Was it worth going to war to prevent a nuclear weapon in Iran?
No, it isn't worthwhile. And the only way you would do that is you would have to go to the Congress. We as Commander-in-Chief aren't making the decision to go to war. You know, the old-fashioned way, the Constitution, you go to the Congress and, you know, the old-fashioned way, the Constitution, you go to the Congress, you know, the old-fashioned way, the Constitution, you go to the Congress, and find out if our national security is threatened. And I'm afraid what's going on right now, it's similar to the war propaganda that went on against Iraq. And, you know, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction, and it was orchestrated, and it was, to me, a tragedy of what's happened these last 10 years, the death and destruction, $4 trillion in debt. So, no, it's not worthwhile going to war. If you do, you get a declaration of war, and you fight it, and you win it, and get it over with.
Thank you, Congressman. There's actually a system at work here with...
Ron Paul is not going to be president of the United States. A libertarian is not going to be elected. We are not a libertarian country.
There's actually a system at work here with...
But what about Ron Paul? He only spoke a total of 89 seconds in last night's debate. So why give him short shrift? He polls very well. He usually wins, you know, most of the straw polls, or he's very high on the straw polls. So what gives here? He only spoke for 89 seconds. He's not complaining.
You know, I'm not really sure what's to give, actually, why he hasn't had an opportunity to really speak during these debates more than he has. You're right. He's shown to be really in touch with the voters. They seem to really like some of his views, and it shows whenever the straw polls are being held.
There's actually a system at work here with...
I like Ron Paul. I think he's a good guy. But honestly, he has just zero chance of getting elected. You have to win an election.
I really get a kick out of Ron Paul. I really like a lot of what he says. You can't like everything, but I like a lot of what he says. I think he's going to have a hard time, but I sort of, you know, really understand a lot of what he's saying. And a lot of what he's saying is not incorrect.
There's actually a system at work here with...
Another question about electability. Do you have any, sir? There's always the question as to whether or not you are in fact viable. Your differences with the Republicans with the rest of the Republicans on this stage has raised questions about whether or not you can actually win the Republican nomination, sir.
Well, we've only had 2 little primaries so far, so it's pretty premature to decide which one is going to be the candidate. But, you know, when you think about it, if you measured everything I've ever said, every vote I've ever taken against the Constitution, You know, I'm a strict constitutionalist. Are you suggesting the Republicans should write me off because I'm a strict constitutionalist? I'm the most conservative member here. I have voted, you know, against more spending and wasting government than anybody else. So you're suggesting that I'm not electable and the Republicans don't want me because I'm a strict fiscal conservative, because I believe in civil liberties? Why should we not be defending civil liberties? And why should we not be talking about foreign policy that used to be the part of the Republican Party? Mr. Republican Robert Taft didn't even want us to be in NATO. And you're saying now that we have to continue to borrow money from China to finance this empire that we can't afford? Let me see if I get this right. We need to borrow $10 billion from China, and then we give it to Musharraf, who's a military dictator who overthrew an elected government, and then we go to war, we lose all these lives promoting democracy in Iraq. I mean, what's going on here? And you're saying that this isn't appealing to Republicans? Where did this come about? I think this is a Republican message. I defend the platform. It used to say we got rid of the Department of Education. It doesn't say that. Now, we as Republicans went and doubled the size of the Department of Education. So where have we gone? I think we've lost our way. And then the insinuation that I am less Republican because of that?
Congressman, thank you very much. We have to take one more break. We'll be right back with one of the most contentious issues of the day. Stay tuned.
There's actually a system at work here with...
And, you know, when I was watching the debate, I also felt like, why don't the Republicans want to vote for this guy? You know, he's great. But that's kind of the problem for Ron Paul, I think.
All right. Does he represent a vision of the Republican Party closer to Barry Goldwater than either of the George Bushes? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair.
Go ahead.
Well, and I just think the fact that he can appeal to people like me or to people like Juan, and I don't think either of us are saying we would vote for him, but that we find him appealing sort of explains why he would have a problem with the conservative base in the Republican Party.
All right. You are a Democrat. You are a moderate Democrat. You worked in the Clinton administration. How does Ron Paul appeal to you? You know how he appeals to me and to many of us watching, but how does he appeal to you, Kirsten?
Well, I think his foreign policy views are obviously very in line with where a lot of liberals are, where a lot of Democrats are. But what's appealing about him overall is that he is intellectually honest and that he obviously has a lot of integrity. He says things that are unpopular quite often. He's been called crazy. It doesn't matter. He never backs down, you know. And he has stayed the course on what he believes. And now suddenly people are coming around, even some Republicans, and saying, you know what, you're right, we shouldn't have invaded Iraq.
There's actually a system at work here with...
Where's Ron Paul? We disqualified him because his people slammed the poll. You know, we have technology, you guys. We know what you're doing. We told you not to do it, you did it, so he's disqualified. It's too bad about Ron Paul, it really is. I know his guys are very, very passionate. I kind of like that. But, you know, he's not going to be the nominee. There's not a chance in the world that he will be nominated for the Republican run at President Obama. Not a chance in the world. It's just not going to happen.
There's actually a system at work here with...
My motivation, my goals has always been to promote liberty, believing that's what made America great. If we want prosperity, if we want peace, we understand what the cause of liberty is all about. And we have to understand that a free market system and sound money gives us the prosperity. And it also is the humanitarian program, because once you get into the welfare state and the socialist state, it all backfires. So if you care about people, you believe in liberty, that's what made America great. That's what I want to restore.
There's actually a system at work here with...
You can hold the Ron Paul stuff.
You know, people say the media picks the candidates. Well, this is an example. This is the most grievous and exaggerated example of candidate picking I've ever seen. Now, the question is, why did they do that? This is the two-party system. You know, the media has a vested interest in the two-party system. Their contacts are there. Their people are there. It's a horse race. They present this to the American public, which is, you know, fairly simplistic. They like a horse race. They can sell this. It works.
There's actually a system at work here.